Alright, hopefully he didn't promise too much. And hopefully the audio works. This is to wake you up. Not working. Alright, unfortunately that wasn't the full power that the discotheque would deliver. I don't know what's wrong with the sound system over here. So I start with another movie that you've come across some time ago, and then I'll ask you what we're seeing over here. Yeah, so what are we seeing here?
He's distracting them.
He's doing stuff by distracting the people, and it's so easy, right? I've seen even a TV show where such a guy was able to get the revolver of a politician out, and he didn't notice even, right? So what I want to say is we are being distracted. And we are being robbed of all sort of savings. I'm not talking about taxes here, but basically we're being robbed of our human rights. And all of that is part of attention economy. So this lecture is about opportunities, risks and features of markets, and marketing in digital times. And of course, this kind of picture is something that you get to see many times. What is it about? Nudging, of course, right? So you get offered two things, an apple and a choco muffin, and of course the choco muffin is not as healthy as the apple, so if you want people to eat more healthy, you put the apple in front and the choco muffin further away, right? And we know this trick actually, you know, like has been described a couple of hundred, if not several thousand years ago. And you know how that ended, right? So people were expelled from paradise. Now the question is this thing happening again? Yes, you say? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Okay, this is 50-50. Maybe we should have a little battle over here, or I just continue with the next slide. I mean, this is the kind of advertisement we see many times, right? So what's going on here? Well, two things are combined with each other, right? A car that you're supposed to buy, and then basically some other cue that suggests you get some extra when you buy this car, right? And that trick helps automobile producers really to earn many thousands more than they could otherwise earn, right? So you're being overcharged. And apparently you're okay with that. If you have bought a car in the past, most likely you have been fallen prey to this kind of trick. And this kind of trick is being used many times, right? So let's have a look at this poster announcing a certain movie. Let me put movie now. If you look more closely, then there's basically a hidden message. And in fact, these kind of tricks are being used all the time. These are just two examples, and I've seen much worse examples. I've seen examples that have been on display, publicly, that were so sexist that I wouldn't dare to show them over here. I mean, that's really bad. And it goes on and on and on. So, who sees the message over here? It takes a long time. smart people, right?
Yeah, sex stuff in the corner.
And it's just part of it. So who sees more?
That's it.
And that's something apparently that Google wants to sell, right? And Facebook is much better. Now the main point is, while it takes a long time to recognize these things consciously, your subconsciousness would notice these kind of things and it would respond to the message, right? So basically, it's being used to make you buy stuff, right? To be kind of hypnotized without even noticing it, and in fact, we're being exposed to all sorts of cues, not only buy, but to obey, to conform, to whatever, right? And it does something with you. So I know that some colleagues of mine have studied an information platform where, like with Google, if you search for something, then there are some proposals made how to extend your search by additional words and narrow it down, right? These kinds of suggestions that are being made to you will be effective for 15 more minutes. It's still there in your mind, it will influence your further thinking and choices. And some people say, yeah, this is being used also for predictive programming. What is predictive programming? Yes?
You recommend an action, you predict the behaviors, and then you say that you need to do this.
Okay, and you've done it. Right? Big Brother show. What was it good for? Who's never seen Big Brother show? Never ever. Be honest, okay? So maybe there's some hope for humanity still. But all the others basically got the message, oh, what's so bad about Big Brother, about being observed all the time and other people watching? It's fun, That's the message. And that's why you probably have gone on demonstrations when Edward Snowden's revelations came out in the news. Who has been demonstrating at that time? See, nobody. Isn't that strange? So you have been prepared in advance for this surveillance to come. You were already okay when governments, through newspapers, basically told you, oh, actually, we forgot to tell you that you're being surveilled, right? And then all these other shows like Jungle Camp and so on, what is this about? It's basically to make you used to the idea that you will be eating insects in the future. Of course, meat is not a very sustainable product. It consumes a lot of water and calories. It's really a bad thing, and so they want you to change from meat to either vegan or insects. Who's ever eaten insects? Okay. And the other ones will do it as well within their lifetime, right? Now the issue is, 95% of the information that we're exposed to, we don't consciously recognize. But it's still processed by our brain, and it will have an effect on our thinking, on our emotions, on our decisions, and our behaviors, right? And here's a pretty old example. The US anthem on TV in the 60s.
Our national anthem.
I've heard it many times, right? And that's the text. You saw the text appeared at the same time, right? That's not what happened. Basically, subliminary, you were exposed to a different kind of message than you read. And your subconsciousness was able to read it and respond to it. Yeah, that was in the 60s. But it started much earlier. Edward Bernays, I'm not sure you heard the name before. He was a relative of one of the superstars of psychoanalysis. He was the practitioner. He was not interested in theory. He was interested in how can we use psychology to manipulate masses. And at that time already they realized that you can basically trigger associations between different things. Right? The car and the woman sitting on the car. And that was, on the other hand, also the basis of mass psychology as Hitler used it. Right? So the outcome of this insight, this new way of manipulation was basically the Third Reich, World War II, and in result, 85 million people died. Because people were not prepared to handle this. The radio had come up as a new device for mass communication. It wasn't a communication, it was kind of one-way communication, right? But people didn't know they were manipulated. So this was about 80, 90 years ago. And now, of course, we have much more sophisticated manipulation techniques. And this is called neuromarketing. Right? Neuromarketing is about personalizing the information that you're exposed to, such that it would be even more effective. And such that you wouldn't even notice that you have been manipulated, right? So if you see an ad, if you see a TV spot, you know they want to manipulate you, right? You can basically block that to some extent. You can immunize yourself against that, but if you don't notice that you're being manipulated, if you think that was your own idea, it was basically produced by the internet for you to absorb it and think it was your own idea, then this is what neuromarketing is using, right? In order to learn how to make it more effective, people make all sorts of experiments, and they would maybe even put people into these machines in order to make brain scans and so on, and learn how to program people, in a sense, right? And that's possible to some extent. So we were talking also about social engineering, mind control, and that kind of approach is being used by modern marketing. Unconscious branding is just one possibility. And the idea is that, well, maybe we could get to the point that I could push a buy button and make you buy when I want this. To buy the product that I want you to buy. Or maybe to vote the political party I want you to vote. Now, some people would find that very satisfying. to have that much power over other people, over their thinking and decision making, and so basically, these people would like to be able to take decisions for you. You would be just exercising these decisions, right? And who thinks this is happening to you? Any more people? Who thinks that it never happened to you? Okay. This is our hero. The world now really depends on you, so I have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, right? Why are we so easy to manipulate? Because we're living in an attention economy. We're being overwhelmed with information, right? And all the time you have to respond. Every few seconds there's a new email, there's a new like, there's a new follower, there's a new Instagram photo, there's a new this and that and that and that. So who doesn't use any social media? You?
I don't use Instagram.
And so what are you using?
Facebook and WhatsApp.
Okay. You're lost.
Not the hero anymore.
So the point is we're always in a responsive mode. There is not enough time to check information, is it true or not? And so basically the easiest thing is just to do what's recommended to us, right? Otherwise it takes 10 times as much time or even more, and we don't have that time. Right? So overloading us with information is part of the deal, because then we wouldn't notice 10% of information. We would notice the kind of information that's really being hidden in that heap of information to manipulate us. Right? So big companies like Google and Facebook, they're doing experiments with us all the time. It's called A/B testing, right? So what happens if I put this information top left or top right, or top left or bottom left, or black or red or green, or flashing or not, and all these kind of things. And maybe while something is flashing over here to absorb your attention, the kind of information that will make you book that hotel or have holidays in that destination, that information might be over there and not paying attention to it. This is how it works. So, in a sense, we can say our thinking has been hacked, so we're being programmed. There'll be more information about this, right? And as you're saying, you're kind of in control, right? So you go to the internet, you think, now I'm tricking the hotels and the airlines because I will book my flight or my overnight stay over the internet. I will get the best deal. You're being cheated on again, because everyone gets a personalized deal, right? So not everyone gets to see the same price. And so how do they do that? Well, basically they figure out how much do you earn, how much do you have on your bank account, do you have an expensive computer, do you have an expensive phone, do you live in an expensive quarter of town, what kind of friends do you have, and then basically they figure out how much money they can take from your pockets, basically. Right? So we don't have markets anymore as you learn about them in economic textbooks. Right? So what have we learned? So basically all the supply is put on one market, almost infinite numbers of products, and all the demand then picks these products from the market, and the price is being adjusted in such a way that the market is cleared. That means all the products that have been produced will be sold, and that's it. This world almost doesn't exist any longer. Instead of these infinitely big markets. We have personalized pricing. And maybe the market of today is just size 1. It's you. I have a great feeling, I made a great deal, but in fact, they have figured out how to make a good deal with you. So they know how to get the most out of your pocket and even give you the feeling that you made a great deal. Yeah, data is the new oil, and personal data is how you make a lot of money with people. And now, as you're sitting here, you're delivering data to some companies you don't even know. Your smartphone does it for you. You may say, I'm taking care of my personal data, I'm not exposing myself, I don't have a Facebook account. Who doesn't have a Facebook account? Oh, not many people. Okay, and so you're exposing yourself apart from one person. But anyway, if you're trying not to expose yourself, you can't. By the way, even if you don't have a Facebook account, if you go to a news site and there's a Facebook symbol somewhere, they will create a profile about you. They still know you and what you're interested in. So, in these times, you're basically the product. So the new kind of data means you. Your life is being commercialized. Give me your data, please. Give it to me now. And it could give you really many examples what kind of data is being collected, but it's basically everything. Maybe the most extreme case has been reported about by the Intercept. The NSA is capable of identifying you based on your voice profile. So assume you're going on holiday. You even decided to have a digital detox. You left your smartphone at home at your computer. Unlikely to happen, I know, but anyway, let's assume this. And now you're at the beach bar, and you're talking to somebody, and that somebody has the smartphone at the bar. So the NSA can pick up your voice based on your voice profile, figure out what you say, where you are, whom you're talking to, what you're saying, and evaluate all of this. It doesn't matter whether the smartphone is turned on or off. CIA Director Gus Hunt already in 2013 told us you're a walking sensor platform. And it's really very nearly within our grasp to be able to compute on all human-generated information. This is your economic status, that's your health status, that's your friendship network, relatives, colleagues, your psychology, everything they can get. Okay, so what's going on here? So you see they're already checking in. So he didn't say at that time how they do it, but we learned it anyway. So who've ever heard about? Oh, you see, now it's not working any longer. It's unbelievable, right? No, I really. Who has these kind of tricky devices to kill my computer? I really have to turn it off and turn it on again. Even though, for these kind of reasons, I've turned off Bluetooth, I've turned off Wi-Fi.
Probably NSA heard you.
Huh?
NSA might have heard you.
Who was the person who was just eating? Yeah, the issue was funny, but Anyway, so who has a question in the meantime or a comment? No? No questions, no comments? Yes, please.
Well, since so many companies use this subliminal advertising, how do they ethically justify it?
Well, you have to ask them. I think the excuse is always, oh, people didn't really protest against it. They let it happen. So it's kind of an implicit agreement that they assume. And the argument is often like, oh, people are uploading photos and stuff into the internet. And so really they don't care about other people knowing about their lives. This is the argument made, and for the rest of it, basically, values change over time, and the new generation, like you and even younger people, they will not care about it anymore at all. So, people like me who thinks we should have privacy that's protected, I would say it's just a dinosaur who's going to die sooner or later, hopefully sooner than later. Yeah. Any other question or comments? No? Okay, now I have to enter my password. Apparently it wasn't changed, at least. Okay. Shut down the computer because of a problem, that's what we noticed. And now we have to get back to presentations. And over here we go. Now, when I wanted to tell you how the CIA does this, suddenly it didn't work anymore. So here we go. Wall 7. Who has ever heard about Wall 7? Nobody. See? That was the trick. Like, Snowden had such a big scandal to reveal, and then basically the newspaper cut it down into small slices, like this salami pieces that were just big enough for you to swallow. And then after kind of the fifth revelation, you got tired, you was bored, you saw you had understood it, you saw this is all about hunting down terrorists. Of course you're not a terrorist, so why should you care? This is just about public safety, but in fact, I will show you this is all about you and nobody else. It's just about all of you. And so what they're doing basically is they're hacking all electronic devices, right? Computers, smartphones, smartwatches, smart TVs, smart cars. What else do we have? Probably a bank account too.
Glasses.
Glasses.
Google Glasses.
Google Glasses, okay. Not too many people wearing Google Glasses, but anyway, they would hack anything. Yeah, you're totally right. So the point is, you're being profiled and targeted, all of you, and every single day they collect probably of the order of gigabytes per day about everyone. And that's pretty much. There's probably more information than you have about yourself on your own laptop. And now we have read this kind of news. This company knows what you think. This was about Cambridge Analytica, right? And so it was claimed at that time that with about 100, 200, 300 likes, it's possible to figure out what kind of personality you have and know you better than your friends. But the point is, you choose your friends very carefully because you need to trust them, right? You know, your friends can manipulate you, and that's why you choose them so carefully. But the companies that know you better than your friends, you often don't even know by name. And they can manipulate you better than your friends. So that's the issue. So there are even companies that offer that kind of information about your personality, like Crystal knows, know everyone's personality. So your friends, your enemies, your boss, your neighbor, your competitor, politicians, whatever, you know. So this is more about digital tools, right? So what we can say is basically our life is being downloaded to the internet for free. We're not going to pay you anything for it. It's the kind of companies that complain if you download a song or a movie, they download your life and for nothing, you know? And then they're using it to personalize their products and services to make you happy, right? So, one can basically say that not only they know a lot about you, but also they're kind of digital doubles that are alive. So there is a black box for every one of you. And that black box has a learning algorithm, machine learning, and you feed it with all that surveillance data to learn to behave more and more similar to yourself. So they have a copy of yourself. It's not identical, but it's similar. And with that copy, they can make experiments. Expose that copy to certain kind of information, and then see what kind of information makes that digital double do certain kind of things and apply it to you. This is kind of cutting-edge technology. Now, you've probably read about this book, Nudge. It's not so old, it's I think from 2007-8. And this is not about personalization at all. But it was giving basically a political justification for manipulating people's behavior. And they call it even liberal paternalism, right? To make it sound good for you. Like liberal sounds like, oh, you're free to do what you want. Now, paternalism is, oh, we'll take care of you, don't worry, you know. But it's about manipulation and nothing else, right? Even Richard Thaler got a Nobel Prize for this a couple of years later. His co-author had started to write critical books about manipulation, and so he was left out. And of course, that is also interesting for politicians, right? In the sense, it's a digital center to manipulate your thinking and behavior. Now, this is our Swiss data protection officer. He said citizens shouldn't be turned into laboratory rats of the digital society. He doesn't say many things publicly, but you know, this is one of the things that he said and came about 10, 20 years to date. Because in the meantime, Cambridge Analytica and others have figured out how to determine your personality and how to come up with personalized messages tailored to your personality to trigger you. And so basically what is behind this is what we call behavioralism. It goes back to the 30s of last century, when they made experiments with all sorts of animals, which were put into these inner boxes and they were exposed to positive or negative stimuli to make them do certain things, right? So if they did something that the experimenter wanted them to do, they got some food. Yeah? So eventually they did that kind of stuff because it gave them food. If they did something that they didn't want to see, then maybe they were electrically discharging and was painful, and the animals didn't want to do that again. Right? Now this kind of thinking, yeah, stimulus response, input output thinking, and you're the machine in between, you know, brain as a computer in a sense, this has been also transferred to humans. And you have been sitting in the Skinner box for a couple of years now and you haven't even noticed. Because the Skinner box that we have been put into is called a filter bubble. That is the personalized information world that is created just for us, you know, it's kind of tailor-made. Kind of, it suits you, it feels good. It feels like your own ideas. And that's why you're vulnerable for it. You're not critical because it feels right. And then they add a little epsilon to change your opinion towards more right-wing or more left-wing, pro-foreigners against foreigners, pro-migrant against migrant, pro, you know, whatever, against whatever. And then over many times, you know, they get a lot of people to some different way of thinking. And that has been really done in a scientific way. So people's brains use just 100 watts. Much more efficient than computers, supercomputers, AI systems, you know, AI system of Google uses as much energy as a city. Your brain uses so much energy as a light bulb. Much more efficient. A wonderful thing. You can do so many things. How does it do it? Well, it uses heuristics. It makes simplifications. And as a result, you know, there are some biases, and these biases can be used to trick you. And basically, they map all those biases. And for all those biases, a digital trick was invented to trick you. You know? That is, by the way, from the J-trick revelations, one of the Snowden revelations. It's, you have to read about it in the Intercept. This is among the worst program to manipulate people and humiliate people that you could ever think of. Now, at the time when this revelation was published in the Intercept, people were shocked, and those who read it, but then the idea was that how the Secret Services are applying this to enemies, you know, like spies of foreign countries or enemy countries or whatever, you know, enemies of course, but anyway. So we saw, again, this is not going to hurt us. It doesn't matter for us. And this was totally wrong, because these days those manipulation techniques are being applied on population scales. And these are information weapons, right? You cannot just sell this stuff to any country. You need to have a military approval for this. This is a weapon. Now it turns out this weapon is directed against you, against your own people. Right? And Google uses it basically to show you some personalized ads. And what else they do, it's hard to say. And as a result, this kind of thing happens, right? People are being synchronized, Gleichschaltung. And you think, now he's really exaggerating, you know, I don't believe a word of what he's saying, then you should really have a look at this TEDx talk by Tristan Harris. He has been working in a Google control room. A Google control room, right? He explains how a handful of tech companies are controlling billions of minds every day. All the time, including yours. Yeah, so this is really about mind control in a way. It's not working perfectly, of course, but yeah. And if you want to read a little bit more about it, then you should also look into the Sentient World program. So there it describes basically you can use that technology to make psyops. Psyops are, you know what that is? A psyop is a psychological operation, right? Okay, and of course politicians have discovered this and they wanted to be more effective in ruling their country, and so the question came up, can we now basically rule the world like a wise king empowered by big data? Could we run society like a giant machine? Because in principle, the goal would be you run that simulation of the entire world with the little black boxes representing your digital blue balls, and then run different versions of this world and figure out what is the best version of all of them, and then you would want to implement that. But then everyone has to play this role, right? And that's why they don't want you to deviate from the plan, they want to manipulate your decisions so you would fulfill your part of that plan. There would be any freedoms for creativity, innovation, or whatever, And in fact, Singapore, for example, has seen itself as a social laboratory, and they have experimented with this, and a lot of other countries have experimented with this, and the idea was to come up with smart cities, smart nations, to automate cities, to take out people as a disturbance. And for some people, we're just too chaotic, we're messing up plans, so this is what they want to change, basically. And Google is in there, and some other big IT companies are also working on smart cities concepts, and Google wants even to reprogram the state. They're producing software for computers and smartphones, but they're much more interested in producing software to run our society. And IBM wants to do such a thing, and Facebook wants to do such a thing. And eventually, Putin warned us that the leader in AI would be ruling the world. And so the question is, who's the leader in AI? China?
South Korea.
South Korea? Well, Google seems to be late already, and China has, in a sense, invented a digital totalitarian state. So what are they doing? They're not just nudging people with personalized information, but they have introduced basically a social credit score, or a citizen score, where all the things that you do and don't do will get plus or minus points, right? And this is how they steer people. Like if you pay your rental fee a few days late, minus points. If you cross the street while there's a red light, even though no car is around, nobody else, it doesn't disturb anyone, the camera will detect you, minus points. If you don't visit your grandma, often you have minus points. If you read critical political news, minus points. If you have friends who read critical political news, minus points. So if you have the wrong friends, sorry, that's very bad for you. And so on and so on. And then basically, the outcome is that this credit score will basically determine what kind of jobs you can get, what kind of visas you will get for other countries, whether you can still fly by plane, if you can still take the fast train, how fast your internet connection will be. Yes, it's not funny, right? So you have clicked the wrong link, and then basically, well, your computer doesn't work anymore, right? Okay, so we call this technological totalitarianism, and we should just blame China because all countries and a lot of big IT companies have basically done a very similar thing. Right, here in the West we call it surveillance capitalism, so basically in the past democracy was, how should we say, that was the foundation, of course, and capitalism was a subroutine, to create a high quality of life and make people happy. But the framework was democracy and human rights. Now basically everything is becoming digital, and democracy is only left on the surface. Elections are manipulated, opinions are manipulated, the legal system is being replaced by code is law. Political system is very much based on who pays more, nudges more people, and even the equality principle and of course human dignity and privacy are undermined as well. So basically surveillance capitalism has become the framework and democracy has become the garbage. Now, well, in China, the government determines how you're being nudged and what gets you plus or minus points. In the West, like every single company does it separately, right? Everyone has their own scores. Everyone nudges in different ways for their own gain. So it's like a family sitting in front of the TV, and there are basically different remote controls, and everyone is switching all the time, and your brain is a TV set that's being switched all the time by those different companies and whoever has access to that information that will influence you. So it's basically there is a big struggle for you among those different powers, right? And what will happen, of course, is a fragmentation of society, right? And I think we can see that at the moment. There's a lot of hate speech which is exploding, and before we thought we would all like each other and kind of be global citizens living in love and peace with each other, and now there are a lot of people who think, oh, I hate these people, I hate those people, and that's a side effect, I guess, of that kind of technology, right? Now, of course, you could say Dirk has a very particular perspective on that kind of technology. Let's hear opinions of official politicians and business people, right? Steinmeier, German president, he spoke of a deadly danger for democracy. Justice Minister Barley said democracy was in threat. And here, a previous high-level CDU member said there's an invasion of opinion bots, or social bots, and also de Maizière, the previous Minister of the Interior, said there is a problem. And I showed you this, it says everything, right? This is a roboticized evil force that has been unleashed upon humanity. Has been used to manipulate election outcomes, like Brexit. And it's kind of military-style propaganda that's being unleashed upon us, right? For a long time, nobody cared. Then Donald Trump got in power, and suddenly people said, oh, that's a very bad thing. In fact, however, that kind of technology was also used before. Obama was using big data to figure out who would vote for whom and who could be pushed maybe towards voting Democrat. And the same kind of technology was being applied in Latin America. So there's a whistleblower that basically said that he digitally rigged elections all over Latin America. And then we read news like this: Cameron's success is a paradox, and how did Turkey's Erdogan reverse his fortunes, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a possibility that since a couple of years there was no democratic election that was not digitally rigged. So suppose somebody had the digital power to determine the outcome of election and could basically determine the governments around the world. Yeah. Maybe we're not so surprised anymore why the world doesn't work anymore, that suddenly there's a climate emergency, like 50 years time to do something, nothing happened, and suddenly the world is broken. Very strange. Anyway, so Tim Cook of Apple, he criticized Google and Facebook exactly for that kind of manipulation. Sean Parker, a previous Facebook manager, said this social media company exploits the vulnerability in human psychology, and others have said we have basically solved the privacy of people. George Soros even warns of the end of civilization altogether. Maybe a bit exaggerated, but in a sense we have arrived in a fact-free world. And this brings us to George Orwell, right? Because he, for the first time, has talked about it. In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. War is peace, he writes in 1984. Freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And in a sense, we can say this is exactly what's happening, right? So, for example, German politicians at one point in time said, we need to defend peace in Afghanistan, which meant that they were going on war. Suddenly they were selling war as peace, right? Freedom is slavery. This is exactly this, Oh, people don't want to be burdened with difficult decisions. Just tell them what to do, and we'll make them free. Ignorance is strength, of course, in times of fake news. That is so true. Actually, Barack Obama, in one of his last acts, he was warning of this, right? In his correspondence dinner speech on May 1, 2016, he said, this is also a time around the world when some of the fundamental ideals of liberal democracies are under attack, and when notions of objectivity and of a free press and of facts and of evidence are trying to be undermined, or in some cases ignored entirely. And in such a climate, it's not enough to just give people a megaphone. And he was calling the press basically to dig deep and figure out what was really going on. Because at that time, nobody had a clue really what was done to people's brains. We could go a step further and say, it's also from George Orwell, who controls the past, controls the future, who controls the present, controls the past. So it's becoming possible to change content of the internet on a massive scale. Brexit, in a sense, has been an experiment on changing human history. That's my interpretation, at least. And we are now having a situation where basically it's possible to manipulate video footage in real time. And even to make people say different things. right? So maybe I show you this. Can I have more? Let's try this. Okay.
Freeform above it, and we have the text under it. And when we play back, the text and audio should play back at the same time. So let's try it.
And I kiss my dogs and my wife.
It's actually easy. We can just type the word dogs here.
And I kiss my wife and my dogs.
We can actually type something that's not here. And here we go.
And I kiss Jordan and my dogs.
We're not just going to do with words. We can actually type small phrases. So let's say, okay, so we remove those words and we do 3, 5. Whoa! And play back.
And I kiss Jordan 3 times.
Yeah, so basically, all of this can be manipulated. We're talking about deepfake, of course. And in a sense, one could say we're living in a matrix world, right? Basically, through all that personalized information, an additional layer of reality has been added that would influence our thinking, our emotions, and decisions. And I'm not the only one who's thinking this, you know. We could read these articles a couple of years ago. Tech billionaires convinced we live in the matrix. And they're secretly funding scientists to help break us out of it. And Elon Musk was one of them. So, I think we will make a break over here, and you should figure out how to break free from the matrix in the meantime, okay? All right. You know the song, I Want to Break Free, right? So who has an idea how to break free from the matrix? Ignorance. What else? Yes?
Figure out scenarios in which the fabric of reality doesn't follow our rules anymore. And that will give us some insight about what maybe runs us behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Essentially how we can hack.
So I personally hope that chaos will help us a little bit. You know about chaos theory, butterfly effect. That means if we have a certain system with many interacting parts, then under certain kind of conditions, a slightest change would have really a system-wide impact. So you need to learn how to use that butterfly effect for yourself. Right? So why am I talking about all of this? Because we need to understand how the system works. So we can basically defeat it if we want. We can make it work for us. So I don't think it makes sense to hide. You know, it's just not possible to not deliver any data into the system. It's much better to understand how the system works and what makes it act in certain ways, right? The point is it's not just feeding information to you in order to manipulate you, but it's also living on all the surveillance data. It's being fed in real time with that surveillance data to learn what to do, right? So you need to understand about the weaknesses of big data and learning systems in order to use it for you. Like here's these examples of self-driving cars that have been trained to recognize traffic signs. And it turns out that if you add a few pixels, I mean a little bit of noise, then it wouldn't recognize anymore the traffic sign. Or it would recognize something else, right? they can kind of put sand into the eyes of this super duper intelligence that's trying to control you. But you need to know how the learning algorithms work and how they can be tricked, right? But in principle, I think it would be possible to create such a butterfly effect. And that produces glitches in the matrix, right? And those glitches basically, these are a little chance to break out of it. And you better don't wait long, because there's more in the pipeline. We are now basically heading into an age of the Internet of Things and cyber-physical system, as they call it, where there would be billions of devices, smart devices that are able to measure. But basically, you would equip objects with senses. And you could equip those objects with artificial intelligence too. That means objects like this table in the future might be smart. It might have senses, it might respond to the environment and may behave in an intelligent way. But it's a totally different world when things are intelligent. And then the question is, how would you basically have all of the data streams? And would go by light. So Wi-Fi is being replaced by Li-Fi. I see these LED lights in many places now. In principle, one such LED can process, I think, with 8 gigabits per second, if I remember well. That's a lot. Now, just imagine you would basically combine millions of such LEDs together, and what kind of transmission capacity could you have? Then, of course, you need to process that data, and for this, you need to have quantum computers that can handle it. And of course, they're working on this too. And if you look for D-Wave, it's not the only kind of quantum computer system. IBM has a different one, and Google too. And you can see who is interested in this kind of technology. Lockheed Martin, right? The military company, again, Lockheed Martin. NASA, Google, Lockheed Martin, Los Alamos National Laboratory, that's the military research institute, Temple Defense Systems, Google, NASA, Volkswagen. And then IBM, Samsung, GP Morgan, Daimler, and so on are also interested in this, So that's the technology to either rule or free the world, right? That's not all. There's a new kind of neurotechnology. Obama's BRAIN project, or the BRAIN initiative, $3 billion should have been put into this project in the past 10 years. And then you can read over here what's the purpose. Nanoscience and nanotechnology combined are poised to provide a rich toolkit of novel methods to explore brain function by enabling simultaneous measurement and manipulation of activity of thousands or even millions of neurons. We and others refer to this goal as the brain activity mapping project. When I read that a couple of years ago, I thought, oh, the Americans again. Now they want to measure the activity of every single brain cell, if they could. And in fact, then here's I believe, excerpt of an IBM brochure about the digital future, and they say knowledge is doubling every 12 months, soon to be every 12 hours. And it's because we'll have human brain indexing. Yeah, I mean, we download it. So some people actually are trying to create virtual personalities on the internet, and the idea is to live forever by downloading you to the cloud. How cool is that? Who wants to do such a thing? Who wants to down here? One person. Two. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and tell me how it is. Yeah.
Would you still be able to control everything how you want? I'm sure. Or download.
Well, in principle, you know, if you have this AI, which is in the cloud and personalized in a sense, you know, you could also have some output devices, right? And some output devices could be a robot or two or three, and it could be different kinds of devices, like this. Yeah, you could, in every country you could have a robot representing your interests, if you can afford it. I mean, this is speculation, but it's not that far away from technological possibility. And so people like Miriam Mackel, well-respected personality, well known when it comes to digital developments, she's talking about neurocapitalism. My interpretation is more she's actually warning a bit, because in principle, when people like Elon Musk are producing these devices, like brain chips, and connect us to the internet, then not only is it possible to read content of our brain, but also to write in content into our brain. And yeah, and then we are being really becoming output devices that are being controlled by business interests, right? Yeah. And then there's this thing, Cody's law, right? Algorithms more and more determine what's possible and what's not. It's not being passed by parliament. It's a computer programmer basically determines how the world works. And not just one, of course, but I mean, in the past, the algorithm of Google or Facebook has been changed, I believe, several times a day, right? So, and these were a couple of hours, a single programmer could have a significant impact on how Google or Facebook works and the effect on society, right? Now, if you think you don't need to be concerned because you're so smart, you know, and you're smart, I agree, but are you smart enough? That's the question. You need to see movies on selective attention. Who has seen these movies? The gorilla. So it's amazing, right? I mean, basically, if you are really focused on counting how many times the ball is passed between the people, then you don't see certain kind of things that don't matter for the task, even though it's in the middle of it, like the elephant in the room that people don't see. Yeah, this is the elephant in the room. We are living in a new society and nobody told you, because it still looks like it. Houses and lecture halls, you know, universities and so on, and elections, and yeah, but behind the scenes things are very different. We have pre-crime systems where not everyone is assumed to be innocent until proven otherwise. Instead, algorithms would determine who would be considered guilty for something. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a terrorist act, or it doesn't have to be a theft of a car or burglary or whatever. We'll see this. I mean, the shocking thing, however, is like these algorithms are more than 90% of the time wrong. And so there are 40 people in Germany who are kind of sorting out those false positives, at least they think, you know. But if they wouldn't do it, there would be a hell of people actually stopped at the airport and put to jail, and that's it. Now, if you think, okay, you're a nice person, nothing will happen to you, well, have a look at this. So this is the Enigma project of MIT. And for some time in the background, you'll be seeing a picture flashing up, which then quickly disappears again, right? Oh, what was that? That was also kind of an almost subliminal thing, right? Oh, that's Bentham's panopticon. And what's Bentham's panopticon? Well, that's basically the perfect prism, right? Like it's a circular prism where there is a tower with the security guards. They can look into any direction. That means any prisoner needs to assume he or she would be observed all the time. You would never know whether you just observed or not, but in principle you could be observed no matter what you do. So there's always a risk to be revealed if you don't do all the time what they want you to do. And that kind of concept has basically been transferred into the digital realm, and it's called Karma Police. It's a program of the GCHQ. So it's not about policing you for stealing a car before you do it. It's about policing your life, your karma, your personality. You know, it's basically the invention of that citizen score that China is now testing, right? So it was invented in the West. In China, just volunteered to test it. And why did they invent it in the West? Well, because they wanted to put you into this digital prison that allows them to control you. There's even a Dutch citizen score, you can read about it. The headline was Risikoburger. And why would somebody do such a thing? You know, it sounds pretty insane. It's probably also insane, but my point of view. But the issue is, well, we're in trouble. And that's the elephant in the room. Nobody really wants to tell you this. You know, the lifestyle that you got used to is basically more or less out of stock. So it cannot go on forever. This is exactly what we mean when we talk about a non-sustainable world, right? I mean, these are the kind of graphs that you've seen many times, right? We're over-consuming the renewable resources of this planet multiple times. I mean, on average, maybe 50% more, but you can imagine, like, on the long run, this cannot end well. There's no future for this system that we're living in today. So if you assume, you know, oh, just because the past 10 or 20 years the system was more or less as you know it, it would be always this way, totally wrong. I mean, this is the one sure thing about this life, that it won't continue like this forever. And here is some of the projections, in this case of the Club of Rome. It basically shows you that the expectation is that not only economic production would break down, but also the population would go down considerably. That means billions of people might die early. So there would be a heavy competition for the resources on this planet. And they don't want you to think about it, and they don't want you to get out of control, and that's why they need to have this digital control of everyone, including yourself. So this system has been made to control you. It's not just to make you consume different kinds of products and pay more. One day I was prompted to read this book, That was the person who was advising a government, you know. When I read this title, I immediately knew, oh, we're in big trouble. This was the moment when I was waking up. And who hasn't heard these days about these trolley problems? You know, the automatic car cannot stop for whatever reason on time, and somebody will die, and then the question is, who would die? You know, how to program that algorithm, that car. And in this case, kind of, it's clear that people would be protected more than animals, but then the question is, if you have a camera that can recognize the person, face recognition, for example, and knows, oh, this person is a student, or professor, or a manager, healthy person, or unhealthy, soon to die, a child, a grandfather, a priest, or a thief, or somebody who's unemployed. So the question is, who will be killed, right? So algorithms would basically decide over life and death. And that's the kind of experiments that people have thought about. So formerly, this thought experiment is to save the lives of people, but now assume you would put that into law, and then suddenly resources fall short, then the life protection algorithm still takes decisions about life and death, but it starts killing people. And that's why there have been PhD theses and so on about computer-based euthanasia in this country. So then the question is, will big data and AI save us? By the way, I don't want you to be frustrated. I personally think that this doesn't have to end this way. But the one thing that you need to realize is this system cannot go on forever, and we better change it soon if there should be a happy end. If we don't change it, then it's not going to have a happy end. But to change it, you need to know that this needs to be changed, right? So, why would big data and AI not save us? I mean, I've been talking here to one of the artificial intelligence experts in the world, and he told me a couple of years back that by 2036 we'll have solved all the problems in the world. I always thought, why is he talking about 2036? Until eventually I realized probably that's the time when this company expects super intelligence. But he said two problems will not be solved: climate change and cybersecurity. Anyway, so there was recently a report by the German government that basically said, oh, the digital technology is actually making things worse. And this is because the energy consumption is really exploding. By 2030, more than 20% of electricity demand will be spent on digital technologies. Now, it's not apparently making our world more sustainable. And then here is a piece of a speech that has been given by a high-level politician in Switzerland, and the possible need for regulation. And he said, the biggest part of artificial intelligence is used for advertisement, and another big part for national security. But advertisement is among the biggest sinners of this time for producing a non-sustainable world, not just in terms of energy consumption, but also making you consume more than you need and you actually wanted to buy, right? That's what advertisement is about. So, is this really smart to have such a system if it makes us run into this trouble? And then the question is really how to break free from that system. It's not so easy because systems are made for self-sustenance, right? Systems don't like to change typically. They're made to stay. So, how to free ourselves from the instrumental powers? There are many ways of ruling us and controlling us, and among them fear and force. A terrorist attack here, a war over there, Valkyrie over there, all the time, newspapers are full of that stuff to scare you. Because it would make you obedient, right? Let's take Ferguson. I think people of color had been killed by the police. People were totally upset, and then the police was coming with this kind of tanks, and bad people haven't been scared. So they demonstrated hands up to show their peaceful intentions. And so basically the conclusion is don't be fearful. Do what you believe is the right thing to do, no matter what. And finally, there is actually a happy end. Ferguson got a new police chief and was, I believe, the first, as they say, black police chief. Right? Which of course changed the social dynamics in that community quite a lot. Then ruling by division, by creating conflict, right? It's called divide et impera, very old principle. So we would be powerful if we would be competing all against each other, and that's why individualism and all that stuff is being taught to us. So everyone against everyone. So if you don't want them to divide you, then don't love each other. Don't let anyone divide you by race, age, gender, sexual orientation, religion, beliefs, or whatever. That's what makes you weak. Promote collective intelligence, right? Identify the best ideas and bring them together. Network ideas. Come up with network thinking. Don't just think for yourself, think for others as well. And this is what our concept of digital democracy is about. And I actually think we can also institutionalize this through City Olympics, where city councils are basically in a friendly competition between cities, involving the citizens. We would come out with better solutions for the world of tomorrow, and those solutions would be open source and Creative Commons, and every city could take them, and any company or NGO could develop them further, combining those ideas and solutions with each other, and so together we will make progress to solve our existential problems before it's too late. So don't wait, just start working on it. Don't hope politicians would save you. Don't hope companies would save you. Save yourself and your friends. Work together, come up with the solutions for the future. Create your future yourself. Ruling by money. Of course, money makes the world go round. We know that. Right? There's a very unequal wealth distribution. And so some people can't really move the world, and others have very little that they can move. So I'm suggesting to come up with a new, multidimensional financial system, a socio-ecological financial system where the feedback loops would be created by the people for the people, and we're just producing a brochure about it in case you're interested. I think that kind of system could really help us push forward a circular economy, a sharing economy, by infusing new kinds of economic forces into the system, but not one-dimensional like profit maximization, but multi-dimensional. So we can pay attention to social issues, environment, health, and all sorts of materials, including CO2. Ruling by debt. So you don't necessarily need to have money to rule other people, you know, if you can manage them to accept debt, to take loans, and basically you can rule them as well, right? And even if you do nothing, due to money creation, which is done by central banks and by banks, the money that you have basically is worth less and less over time. Right? It still says 100 euros, but in fact you cannot buy as much for the 100 euros anymore as you could 10 years ago. So it's also a money illusion. So you think, oh, you earn more than before, but in fact, who knows how much power your money really has about this world still. So that's why I think we should really have a fair financial system. The money creation should work for all of us. I call this democratic capitalism. So money creation would be serving us to the same extent. Because if some people are allowed to create money and other people have to earn money, you know, that of course is a big asymmetry and pretty unfair. I mean, it's going on as long as you accept it. It wouldn't have to be this way. Right? We could come up with a new system where money is being created to serve us, to work for us. Ruling by information asymmetry. And knowledge is power. You know, some person knows more than others. And basically, yeah, that creates a power differential. These people could put power on you. Now, in the past, basically, we were trying to collect more and more information. That's why we had university libraries and universities, and then came big data and all these kind of things. Now, how can you further increase the information asymmetry? Well, by feeding people fake news, of course, right? And this is exactly what's happening at the moment. So there's just a few people who still know what is the truth. And most other people just have to trust the kind of information they're getting. In order to change this, we need to have our own data to establish our own facts, right? We could actually build our own global measurement system. And in fact, we have been working on this a bit. We call that NervousNet. So in your smartphone, there are a lot of sensors. You can use these sensors to measure the environment, and you could decide to share those data, if you like, with others. And so all together, we could create a measurement network for the world, and we would be able to know what are the facts. And ruling by distraction and deception. Yeah. Bread and circuses is an old Roman principle, right? People got upset about the living conditions, and you would give bread to the poor, and you would have these circuses with lions, and you know, some people to excite people, and adrenaline would be kind of put out, makes people feel good. That's why we have also soccer arenas and all these kind of things, you know. And in fact, every social media platform, if it says, you know, oh, you have been followed and there's a new tweet and then whatever, you know, it really creates a little adrenaline flash that makes you addicted to some extent also. And in that way, basically, we have the same kind of system today, right? People are being fed, they're not hungry, and they're being distracted from that elephant in the room that we're not supposed to see. Well, digital enlightenment might help. So you shouldn't believe anything, not even me. You should train your trust and your intuition. It's something that doesn't come by itself. You need to train this, and you need to assume that the truth is hidden behind many lies. So don't believe in what things appear to look like, what appears to be the case. Those people who know how attention economy works, they're using the mechanism of the attention economy to come to those conclusions that they want you to have. You shouldn't follow this trick, And basically, the magician, while he's doing really the important stuff over here, you shouldn't pay attention to it. You will do something with his other hand, so you will watch this, So if there's a lot of noise, a bomb is exploding, the TV is reporting about it, and all these kind of things. Maybe you shouldn't pay attention so much to this, but look up what were the laws that were passed in Parliament this day. It's a common trick, actually, at least to have laws passed on those days where people would watch soccer games, or just shortly before Christmas, or when there is a big subject in the news. So, for example, one of the surveillance laws was passed in Germany when there was a huge debate about gay marriage. Right? Everyone was talking about gay marriage, but nobody was talking about the surveillance law that was passed. They wanted people to pay attention to the gay marriage subject because they didn't want them to pay attention to the surveillance law, right? This is what I'm trying to tell you. Don't fall prey to those tricks. And basically, the point is, in this time, there's always a scandal, right? And you get upset about it, and you say, oh, it cannot be this way, the world has to be changed, we have to pass laws, and politicians and business people, whatever, everything has to change. And then the next day there's another scandal, and again another scandal, and nothing will change. That's the trick. And you need to learn to connect the dots, basically. And there are a lot more control systems, like basically physics, chemistry, biology, economy, politics, psychology, sociology, education, religion, media, data, technology, all of that can be used, if you want, to control people. So then that's why you should live healthy, which strengthens your physical, psychological, mental, spiritual power. Find your own life mission. Don't just do what other people find interesting. Think out of the box. Do what you believe is right. Don't be irritated by others. And I believe consciousness determines to a large part reality. We deserve a better future, and we can create it. So find friends to work on a better alternative future together. We are at a critical moment in time, in history. I think we're going to see a new kind of society, a new kind of reality soon. Well, we need to wake up, we need to be ready for that change, right? That old matrix is trying to keep us back in this old system, and you should try to find a way to break out of the matrix. Let me know when you manage. Thank you.